This is the final call on CBS.
First and goal. Mahomes flings it. It's there! Hardman! Jackpot! Kansas City!
And this was the Andy Reid special. This was the Andy Reid special. We talked about he was saving all day. He's going to fake a motion to go across. And at that moment, he turns and goes back. Hardman, who they didn't have, right? And they go get Hardman and bring him back. And the game-winning drive of Mahomes' career, he's been waiting for. He's won Super Bowls, but he's never had it in an overtime. He is the best. He is the standard. And Michael Jordan wins it again.
Oh, my gosh, it was so bad. Okay, so let's get to why this is so bad. Like, that is a tragic final call. And then did you notice before they went off air, like, Romo was still, like, on fire, happy, and he'd actually called a pretty good game. But butchering the final call is a lot like butchering the final play. Like, we can't say that, yeah, you played great the first, 3.5 quarters, but man, that fourth quarter, just one bad throw, one really bad throw, interception, lost the game. But hey, the rest of it was great. It was so bad. So let's start with the first part about why it's so bad. So Nance's game-winning call was jackpot Kansas City, correct?
Yep.
Right. He had written that down. That was his call. Not a terrible line. I mean, a little formulaic or whatever. And I thought he didn't deliver it like he wanted to. Kevin Harlan, who did on radio, I don't know what his final call was, but had he had, his would have been jackpot, right? He would have kind of sold it a little bit better, but clearly that was his line. And you'll get people saying, well, Vin Scully laid out. Now, Vin Scully, in the famous Gibby home run, Game 1 of the World Series, did, in fact, lay out as Gibby trotted around the bases and waited till he stepped on home, and then he had some poetic words to say. In fairness to Tony Romo, this is different. It's a two-man booth. Vin Scully was, I believe, by himself on that call. So, of course, and the play-by-play guy laying out, Nance was going to lay out. Nance said jackpot Kansas City and wasn't going to say a word. That's called laying out. But the layers to which it's bad is not just that he talked over what should have been what's called nat sound, natural sound. Everybody celebrating, fireworks going off, pandemonium. You just don't say anything. You let the pictures tell the story. You let the pictures tell the story. But the other part was he tries to get in that they didn't have McCole Hardman at the start of the season. And then they traded for McCole Hardman, and, then it's the Andy Reid special. Like, that's his own wording of it. This is what generally you sound like when you're inexperienced. He's not inexperienced. And again, like Tony, I consider him a good dude, but this is that was bad for a guy and he had a good game. He had some insightful stuff. And he clearly knew once he saw the play, it would have been set up great for a diagram and a breakdown. You don't really have time there. They'll come back to you. But man, I don't know. So, Beyer, you hadn't heard that call, correct?
Correct. Yes, that was the first time that I heard it.
Now, part of it is you're hearing it audio-wise, but trust me, when he was breaking it down, there wasn't a replay yet running. He was just talking and talking as if the replay was running. And I honestly think, this is my guess. Okay, so when you're up in a booth, and they probably have more monitors than this, but you have your program monitor, that's what everybody sees. No, wait. Yeah, program is what everybody's going to see. And then sometimes there's on-air monitor, which is on a delay. That can be confusing. You have an ISO monitor. You have your own. And usually to queue up the replay, they'll put it in your ISO monitor, even if it's not in your program monitor. My guess is once the touchdown was scored, he went into kind of talking about it, and they were queuing it up in the replay to the right spot, and he was looking at the replay. That's the only thing I can think of.
Here's my question that I think you could probably answer. How come the guy in the truck doesn't just cut his mic?
I'm guessing because they've never done that.
Yeah.
It's generally seen as like, you don't do that. Like, he makes $18 million a year for a reason. He can say whatever the hell he wants.
Sure.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
I'm with you. But, guy in the truck does, the audio guy, okay, the A1 or the A2, that's the audio guys. The A2 in this case, like, okay, I make whatever, $70,000 a year. He makes $18 million a year. Unless I get a directive, unless I get somebody in my ear from New York City, or I get David Burson, the new president of CBS, saying, cut his mic until 15, 20 seconds after the final call, I ain't doing it. I'm just doing my deal, making sure they sound great. I think that'd be your answer.
Sure. And how famous was that clip, and I know you love it as well, of Kevin Harlan, holding back Stan Van Gundy in the NCAA tournament. I think it was last year, right? When he's going to make his call, but obviously they haven't worked together as much. Stan Van's done TV for a little while, so he would understand. But still, of Harlan taking control of the call,
yes,
of letting everything happen, like that's also maybe Nance needs to stick out his arm. Hey, this is let the moment resonate, and then Tony Romo can go and give us his word salad.
It was word salad is the perfect description of it. Did you know, and I know they flashed the rules, so here's the question I have. And, Dan, I'm going to take you out of this only because you were at the game. So, Jay Stu, give me this setup. Was just you and your hot girlfriend, or who was at the house?
No, it was just Christina and me on the couch. Yeah, it's great.
Okay. So you get to the end of you get into the end of regulation into overtime. Mm-hmm. What were you guys discussing?
Let's see. What were we discussing? This is before, by the way, Christina asked me the most amazing question.
Which is what?
When the Super Bowl teams were determined, she said to me, unironically, isn't it going to be confusing that two red teams are in the Super Bowl? So this kind of shows you the level of interest she has in football, and I love it, by the way. But no, as we were getting to overtime, I honestly, without knowing you were going to hit me with this, I had learned the rules to overtime. I was reminded by it. They reminded us on TV, and then the referee reminded the players at the coin toss. So I was pretty well informed at that point.
Well, did you know there was an additional quarter?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know if there's an additional quarter as much as you go until both teams possess the ball. So whether that takes a quarter and a half or below a quarter or 3/4, and then it hits sudden death.
Crazy. So, but that's all you were talking about.
No, it's
because
not all I was talking about.
So I had.
You were asking if I knew the rule.
No, I did. I ask anything about the rule, Dan Byer? You can be. I don't remember. I just said, what were you guys talking about?
We were happy there was more football to play. I was happy.
So I had my son and two of his friends, and there was my daughter and I think 4 of her friends, and then 2 adults that came to get the kids, whatever, were all watching. And the first thing was we were talking about we're making bets. Since going to Vegas a couple weeks ago, my son is all about over-under totals and bets and prop lines, whatever. And they made a bet on how many times they would show Taylor Swift before the game was over. And I was like, well, my guess is every time Kelsey makes a catch, they'll show him. And then if they win, they'll show her. And then when they bring her down the field, they'll show her again. That was my guess. And then we started talking about overtime, and then all the questions keep coming up. Have they had overtime in the Super Bowl before? Yes is the answer. Byer, lay out of this one. But Stu, did you know when the last time we had overtime was?
Was it the Falcons?
Yes.
Yeah.
Which offensive coordinator was Kyle Shanahan, right? So that's what we're discussing. And then as it creeps closer and closer to the end of overtime, and again, I have to explain the overtime rules. I knew the overtime rules with both teams got a possession. So to my daughter, Harper, who's, she was very proud of herself. She's like, I want to have a Super Bowl party. I have my friends over. And I know a little something. I was like, not Taylor Swift. She's like, no, I know. They're actually all into Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy's big in the teenage girl demo, right? Probably because he looks so young and he's just a nice looking kid, right? So I was explaining to her, she's like, these overtime rules are really confusing. It's like, I was like, well, they're new. What was before? So I took her through what was before with the rules, and that even got even more confusing. Why do they keep changing them? I don't know. Here's Kyle Shanahan on his decision to receive the ball to start overtime.
With the new rules for overtime, what goes into the decision to take the ball first there?
It's just something we talked about with, that none of us have a ton of experience of it, but we went through all the analytics and talked with those guys, and we just thought it'd be better. We wanted the ball third. If both teams matched and scored, we wanted to be the ones who had the chance to go win, and we got that field goal, so we knew we had to hold them to at least to a field goal, and if we did, then we felt it was in our hands after that.
Here's Niners defensive lineman Eric Armstead when he was asked about the overtime rules.
I didn't even know about the new playoff overtime rules, so it was a surprise to me. Yeah, I didn't even know what was going on in terms of that. They put on the scoreboard, and everyone was like, "Oh, even if you score, they get a chance still." So.
Here's Andy Reid and Travis Kelce. Now, one of the other things and did you see this, Dan, in the stadium where I think it was after the first fumble by Kansas City, Kelce kind of bumped into Andy Reid and seemed to yell something at him.
Yeah. They did not put that up on the replay board as well, but again, just saw so much of it on social media. And I was at the Andy Reid press conference when he was talking about it, and I'll tell you what I felt and heard after we hear it.
No, okay. Here's Kelce when he was asked about the incident.
He caught me off balance. I wasn't watching. He cheap shot, but that's all right. He did good. He was really coming over just put me in. I'll score. So that's really what it was. Well, I love that. I mean, it's not the first time. So I appreciate him.
When you and Andy Reid had that, what I call a very engaging conversation.
Oh, you guys saw that?
What was the conversation about?
There were a few cameras.
I mean, was it, hey, I need the ball, I can help us win? What was that about?
Man, it was, I'm gonna keep it between us unless my mic'd up tells the world, but I was just telling him how much I love him.
So we'll find out. What was your take, Dan?
I think that in the heat of the moment, it was something. If that happens in college football, players probably not playing the rest of the game. But they're professionals. They've won Super Bowls together. They're all pros. Travis Kelce is. Andy Reid's top. Like, that stuff doesn't, register. I think we make more of a bigger deal than it was. And not only did Andy Reid say that he was caught off balance once, he said it later on in the press conference and even then winked afterwards, kind of gave a little, sly grin, saying like, he did kind of bump, meaning that he bumped into him with a little force to knock him off. But yeah, it's completely all good, especially when you win the game. I'm sure it's not a great look, but I think that Andy Reid especially handled it great.